Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Gaurav Shah, PhD in Mass Communication. Friends, today the module that we are going to discuss about is violence against women as depicted in films. Friends, as you know, lot of violence is done against women in our society in the name of sexual harassment, rape. Women are being tortured for dowry, etc. This module will enable you to go through the portrayal of women in films, the impact of violence done on women in films upon the society, and how women in films are characterized or treated as. Now, we will proceed with the different types of violence against women. Different types of violence against women. Before discussing how violence against women is depicted in films, let us briefly touch upon the different aspects of violence against women. The word violence from the dictionary meaning implies treatment or conduct proceedings from or caused by or resulting from great physical force or intensely excited feelings or language. In most cases, it is unlawful exercise of physical force, and in some cases of mental harassment used against people. Violence is a state which is marked by physical force or roughness upon persons. It may also cause intense emotional or mental pain in certain areas or certain cases. The United Nations Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, adopted by the General Assembly of the UN in 1993, defines violence against women as any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts, coercion, or arbitrary deprivations of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. Violence against women shall be understood to encompass, but not to be limited to, physical, sexual, and psychological violence occurring in the family and in the community, including battering, sexual abuse of female children, dowry, related violence related to exploitation, sexual harassment, and intimidation at work, in education institutions and elsewhere, trafficking in women, forced prostitution, and violence perpetrated or condoned by the state. Violence against women across the globe has inhibited women as a group from enjoying the basic benefits of human rights, and they are at risk of violence because of their gender. Women are subject to violence in the family in different ways, like wife beating, sexual abuse of female children, dowry-related violence, incest, deprivation of food, marital rape, female genital mutilation, etc. At community level, violence against women rears its ugly head in the form of rape, sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and trafficking. Sometimes there occurs violence against women induced by the state, like women forced to confront women for soldiers during wars. Domestic violence is a violent operation of women within the family. It is perpetrated usually by the husband or partner. Violence may be both physical and psychological. It indicates threat or aggressive behavior towards a woman, not just physically, but towards her self-respect and self-confidence as well. Domestic violence is a global phenomenon happening all the time across the world. In India, it has a different dimension, as here not only the husband but also his family members, especially his mothers, take active part in inflicting violence on the unfortunate bride. Among the different kinds of crimes against women, this is the most frequent and the least reported crime, as women are reluctant to file charges against persons on whom they may be economically or psychologically dependent. Originally, dowry meant some gifts given willingly to a newly married bride by her family members to set her up comfortably in her new home. However, it is seen that the dowry has been anything but voluntary, where the bridegroom and his family demanded gifts and cash, and the bride's family has to comply. Dowry is unfortunately deep-rooted into the socio-economic system in India and is accepted as part and parcel of the marriage process by the people. Dowry is based on a view that a woman is of not much value, hence some material interests have to be satisfied before she is accepted by her in-laws. She is an object passed from one social group to another. Her inferior status is reinforced when her matrimonial family accepts her, albeit grudgingly, even when dowry has been paid. Dowry violence is a sinister extension of domestic violence where young brides are tortured or even killed if their families have been unable to satisfy the demands of dowry from the bridegroom's family. The torture may be mental, physical, or both. This crime is particularly prevalent in South Asia and such places where there is a sizable South Asian diaspora. Rape is the most repulsive crime committed against women worldwide. Women are subjected to forcible sexual act without their consent. In most cases, the women are physically injured and mentally scared. In deplorable cases of gang rapes, often women succumb to the injuries sustained due to the extreme brutality of the criminal act. Hence, sex is used as a weapon to subjugate women. Sometimes rape is also used as a tool to dishonor the woman, her family, and in many cases the social or religious groups she belongs to. Rape is a global menace. Sexual harassment is any form of unwelcome sexual advances by men towards women which may either be direct or through implications. Sometimes men harass women in public places or workplaces to satisfy their unfulfilled sexual fantasies. The deed of this kind of annoying behavior on the part of the man jeopardizes the dignity and safety of women. This is within the patriarchal structure where the power dynamics are played out with male dominance and female subordination. Women from all sections of society all over the world have been at the receiving end of this extremely disturbing and irritating harassment in public places and workplaces or education institutions at some point of their lives. It is euphemistically called eve-teasing in many places. Violence against women has been one of the primary causes for the emergence of women's movement in India in the 1970s. In the initial stages, the women's groups had the double burden of pressuring the police to take action against perpetrators, along with counseling the survivors to come out in the open and talk about the violence they have endured, as the patriarchal bias is a major reason for women to keep quiet about their sufferings. The women's groups have urged in various public forums that violence against women are not private matters as put out by patriarchal elements but concern of society at large. The women's group have campaigned along with some help from mass media to bring this extremely crucial problem to the public domain. The mass media, especially print and electronic media, to some extent have highlighted the activities of the women's groups and the cause they have championed. This has helped in keeping these issues in the public domain and led to the creation of public opinion, which in turn has led to the formulation of important legislations women's issues. Many women's organizations have been critical of how violence against women is depicted in mass media, especially popular Indian films. Now, we will discuss about the violence against women in films. Films are indeed reflections of reality, maybe with some amount of exaggeration. Hence, fiction films that viewers watch are in many cases inspired by real-life incidents. The directors and scriptwriters are part of society, hence they will be influenced by societal events either directly or indirectly. Many events and issues happen in society, of which some are positive while some are negative. Amongst the overtly negative happenings in society are the different types of violence perpetrated upon women in society. Some of these forms have been discussed in the earlier section. All these forms, in their varying degrees of severity, get reflected in films from time to time. Films in India have been using women to portray various roles. They are shown as mothers, sisters, daughters, wives, love interests, friends, neighbors, co-workers of men. They are in most cases either depicted as good and virtuous women or as bad women with loose moral and ethical characters. However, the interesting part is that both good and bad women are at risk of violence perpetrated upon them by men. Rape. Movies on rape often have storylines that are rape revenge thrillers. In this type of films, rape scenes may be pivotal for the storyline and therefore its portrayal is justified. The rape survivor takes revenge on the perpetrators of the crime. In case of Shekhar Kapoor directed movie Bandit Queen, the gang rape scene, in all its violence and horror, played a major part in leading the story of Phulan, the family bandit, forward. It is seen that the storylines are such that the either female vigilante who is fighting injustice of some kind or the sister, near female relative of the male vigilant, is raped. Often violence is triggered after the incident of rape when the vigilant is male. Here the woman raped is the symbol of honor for his family or social group, and her dishonor, izzat lutna, is his direct dishonor too. Rape is committed not for sexual pleasure but to instill fear in the hero and emotionally devastate him so that he will submit to the evil oppressors like land sharks, corrupt politicians and policemen. In such cases the rape depicts not so much the agony of the women upon whom this violent atrocity has been committed, but is shown more as an assault on the honor of the men folk of her family or community who have to seek revenge. The films clearly indicate that the women's body symbolizes the battlefield upon which the men folk and the oppressors will fight upon. Use of rape to justify the mindless violence that follows in such films is not very desirable. It is disheartening to note in most films that if the rape survivor does not turn avenger, she either dies of the grievous injuries or she commits suicide as she has been dishonored. It is indeed distressing to note that filmmakers try to give this message to viewers that in society a rape victim is better dead than alive. Rape, a violent crime, is shown in many films almost like a sexual encounter, and the camera movements are almost voyeuristic. Except a few films, most movies depict rape not as an act of violence but as a sexual act with a skin show, which immediately scales down its impact. Instead of showing the violent criminal act, it merely excites some sections of the male audience for whose benefit the scene has been introduced by the filmmakers. Instead of the viewers being sensitized towards a heinous crime, they are made to derive pleasure out of it. It would have been better if in the film the narrative would have built up the incident of the rape and then moved forward to the scenes after the incident without actually showing the act of rape. This has been depicted in films like 15th Park Avenue, where director Aparna Sen has featured rape as an important and critical juncture in the storyline, yet portrayed it in a suggestive and sensitive manner without showing it directly. Sexual harassment. Films seems to erotize violence between men and women, making violence appear almost a good thing. This seems true while watching song sequences most popular Indian films where heroes often resort to harassing the heroine. The acts ranged from the not-so-subtle dance moves and suggestive lyrics to downright physical acts like pulling their clothes and hair or catching their hands. The heroines are shown to be not responsive to the hero's overtures for whatever reasons, and he is resorting to these deplorable methods to win her affection. Regrettably, at the end of the song, the heroine succumbs at the hero's unheroic and negative advances and falls in love with him. In a particular Hindi film, Hasina Maan Jayegi, Girl Will Agree, starring Govinda and Karishma Kapoor, the hero is shown harassing the heroine while singing to her within this song. He tells his elder brother, played by Sanjay Dutt, that at the end of the song, the girl will comply and fall in love with him. Sanjay Dutt is shown to take out of a knife playfully and hold it on in front of Karishma to force her to say yes to his brother's overtures. This is indeed an extremely negative episode that almost legitimizes the use of force to win a girl's affection. Many films show that the anti-hero or his sidekicks are following the heroine whenever she steps out of the house. This method both irritates and intimidates her along with her family and leads to a change in her normal routine. She is shown to become forced to restrict her movements and live under constant fear and mental pressure. Classic example is Hindi film Dar, Fear, where the anti-hero played by the Shah Rukh Khan makes the life of living hell for the heroine Kiran, played by Juhi Chawla, by stalking and harassing her. Domestic violence. These types of violence are shown in films where women in arranged marriages are shown to ill-treated or even beaten by their husbands or mother-in-laws if they are not satisfied with the wife's looks, capacity to cook or gifts dowry brought during marriage. Films depict that violence occurs at any time due to a small difference of opinion which may be as mundane as not doing household chores properly, or when the woman is perceived as either being disrespectful to the elders of the family or being childless or unable to bear male offspring, or is suspected of being immoral in character. Any of these causes are enough reason for women to be physically beaten or mentally tortured. This is done to discipline her and to bring her to the level of expectation of her husbands and in-laws, for as shown in the film Sau Din Saas Ke. Very rarely do films try to give the message that domestic violence is wrong and that a woman could leave an abusive relation and not suffer in silence. Instead, most films depict and even try to glorify the Hindu concept of Pati Parmeshwar, husband is equal to God. where a woman should bear all sufferings rather than raise her voice in objection or walk out of the marriage. The concept of marriage being sacrosanct is still perpetuated in most mainstream films, though a very small number of films have been made where women are shown to fight for rights or leave abusive or adulterous husband and move in life. Just like in real life, in films too, domestic violence is not restricted to the sufferings of the daughter-in-law only. In some films, it is shown that the son and the daughter-in-law are shown as torturing the aged parents, especially the mother, who is infirm and dependent on them. They are made to do household work and all their valuables are taken away from them, and they are meted out very bad treatment by the daughter-in-law and son. Films like Swarg to Bagban are some examples of aged parents being victimized. Films also depict violence being meted out to such young girls who have formed romantic liaisons with men without a familial consent. Many films depict heroines being subjected to violence at her parental home for falling in love with someone behind the back of family members, or run with a boy who is not approved by family, like Abhishek Bachchan and Bhumika Chawla starrer Run. The victimization shown in films range from being sequestered inside the house and not being allowed to meet anyone, to being beaten up by the relatives and being forced into a speedy marriage against her wishes, like Kareena Kapoor and Akshay Khanna starrer Halchal. Dowry violence. Dowry violence is a regrettable extension of domestic violence, yet very few films directly related to dowry issue highlighting the problems of dowry have been made in India. Films like Dahej, Dulha Bikta Hai and Sasti Dulhan Mehenga Dulha have tried to address this issue, but such films are few in number. Most movies show this dowry harassment within a family as a subplot, where the mother-in-law is shown as the key figure in perpetrating violence on the often newly married brides for adequate dowry to be provided by the bride's family. The films show the daughter-in-law being harassed by the mother-in-law. The harassment ranges from verbal abuse to physical chastisement and even deprivation of food. Tyrannical mothers-in-laws in films have been made famous in yesteryears by actors like Lalita Pawar and Sasikala, to later days villainous mothers-in-law played by Bindu and Aruna Irani. The demure daughter-in-laws have been played by many actors, especially up to the late 90s, where they have been seen to suffer in silence. Very rarely did these films show any form of support coming from other family members, including the husbands. The harried brides are shown to tolerate such violence and go about doing all their household duties despite the violence and humiliation. Impact on society. Films have been a major component of popular culture in society. They have helped in understanding the ethics and value systems along with social structures of many ethnic groups. Unfortunately, violence is a social reality, and hence it is only normal to depict it in films. Amongst all social groups across the world, violence against women is the most shameful reality. Hence, such portrayals are only natural. Women are shown in most films as victims, rarely as survivors, so that we are made to feel sorry or pity for them. This type of depiction may lead to a strong belief among a certain section of viewers that women are weak, and hence force may be used upon them to make them do what others want them to do. Therefore, taking inspiration from real life, many men in real life may use violent methods to force women to do their bidding. In such case, women refuse to do as they have been told. It may so happen that after watching a lot of different types of violence being perpetrated upon women in films, male audience may get insensitive to such violence and treat them casually. This would be a dangerous trend in society, and as when they will find women being subjected to violence in real life, they would often remain indifferent and less sympathetic. In many films where domestic violence or sexual harassment is shown, the storylines are shown in such a manner so as to justify the violence or harassment against the passive women on a screen. Rarely films show the victim as trying to resist the violence strongly. This type of depictions of harassment and stalking further ensures in sending out messages that it is normal and acceptable to use such violence against women either at home or public places. However, this would lead to curbs in mobility of women and increase their dependence on men for protection even in case of mentally strong and financially secure women. Also in films, physical violence on women is shown very explicitly, but discrimination and harassment are given light treatment, thereby making these appear casual and unimportant to the viewers. According to some scholars, many films have dichotomy and use typecast concepts. They tend to follow the traditional gender roles of society, with males dominating and women being submissive and obedient. In a conservative society like India, it is still an uncomfortable situation for parents and children to sit together and talk about the facts of life, even in urban areas. The idea of sex education in schools are yet to take off. Hence, it is only natural for young people to be curious about romantic and sexual relations and look upon films as one of the most important sources of information about them. It is indeed unfortunate but true that most Indian films are still considered a primary source of knowledge about romantic and sexual relationship by most common people. Regrettably, most of the information shared in films is either exaggerations or divorced from reality. The films clearly have divisions on gender. The important characters are put in gendered divisions, with most female characters shown as victims of violence and male characters as aggressors. In some cases, it is not only the villains who are the perpetrators, but the heroes also act aggressively. This is cause for concern, as men in particular identify with the on-screen heroes, and when they are shown as aggressors of violence, it is highly likely that the male viewers could follow their example, just like they follow their heroes' mannerisms and dressing styles. In most cases, the heroes are found to be guilty of committing violence like sexual harassment or domestic violence. This gives license to young men indulgently named roadside Romeos to use these negative methods on unsuspecting women whom may be present in the vicinity. This is popularly termed eve teasing. The men make obscure gestures and catcalls towards women in accompaniment of such songs from popular films. The helpless women, for no fault of theirs, are made to bear the unwelcome sexual advances. It is surprising that these are coolly ignored by most people and may encourage male viewers to indulge in sexual harassment and stalking. Filmmakers seem to suggest that since the heroes are committing such offenses, it is acceptable as they are heroic and likable. To depict violence in films is alright, as it is a social reality, and objective representation of such social evils may help in bringing about awareness amongst public. Unfortunately, this does not happen, and in many cases such portrayals are used to promote the films. Some Indian and Western scholars are of opinion that violence against women as depicted in films may have actually prompted violence against them in real life. They have suggested that violence against women shown in films may give male viewers a false sense of power and right to dominate over women. Now, to sum up, friends, as we see that women are subjected to violence of many kinds in society, be it sexual molestation, harassment, rape, or violence inflicted against them for matters of dowry. We have seen that in many films that have been made in Hindi, like Dulha Bikta Hai for dowry, or films like Run, where the boy flee with the girl without their parents' consent, or other kind of movies. One thing is common, that women in films are shown as victims. If a rape is inflicted upon her, it is shown that instead of her being the avenger or taking vengeance, the matter of rape transfers from her to the men folk. Now it becomes a matter of pride for the man or her family members or their relatives. Now they are going to avenge for the rape inflicted upon the women. Again here, women becomes the victim. And we also see that if the male or the man doesn't avenge, then women is shown that she commits suicide. What does this all show? These all show that women in our society is at the receiving end. And since films or movies are reflections of a society, not a total representation of the society, and yes, in movies, films, the social reality is shown in a bit exaggerated way, but the fact of the matter is women is shown there as a victim. Even with the changing technology, changing attitude, the awareness about showing women equal to male in films is not that much, and we have to work upon that. Thank you. Thank you.